Septimus, what is carnal embrace?
Carnal embrace is the practice of throwing one's arms around a side of beef.
Is that all?
No. A shoulder of mutton, a haunch of venison well hugged, an embrace of grouse. Caro, carnis, feminine, flesh.
But is it a sin?
Not necessarily, my lady, but when carnal embrace is sinful, it is a sin of the flesh, QED. We had Caro in our Gallic wars. The Britons live on milk and meat, lacte et carne vivat. I am sorry that the seed fell on stony ground.
Oh, that was the sin of Onan, wasn't it, Septimus?
Yes. He was giving his brother's wife a Latin lesson, and she was hardly the wiser after it than before. I thought you were finding a proof for Fermat's last theorem.
Oh, it's very difficult. You must show me how, Septimus.
If I knew how, there would be no need to ask you. Fermat's last theorem has kept people busy for 150 years, and I had hoped it would keep you busy long enough for me to read Mr. Chater's poem in praise of love, with only the distraction of its own absurdities.
Our Mr. Chater has written a poem?
He believes he has written a poem, yes. Although I could see how there may be more carnality in your algebra than in Mr. Chater's couch of Eros.
Oh, it wasn't my algebra. I heard Jellaby telling Cook that Mrs. Chater had been discovered in the gazebo in carnal embrace.
With whom did Jellaby happen to mention?
What do you mean, with whom?
With what? Exactly, the idea is absurd. Where did the story come from?
Oh, Mr. Noakes.
Mr. Noakes.
Papa's landscape architect. He was doing some surveying in the garden, with his spyglass, and he glimpsed Mrs. Chater in the gazebo in carnal embrace.
And you mean to tell me that Mr. Noakes told the butler?
Oh, no. Mr. Noakes told Mr. Chater. Then the groom told the butler, because he overheard Mr. Noakes telling Mr. Chater in the stable yard.
Mr. Chater being engaged in closing the stable door.
What do you mean, Septimus?
So, thus far, the only people who know about this are Mr. Noakes, the landscape architect, the groom, the butler, the cook, and of course, Mrs. Chater's husband, the poet.
And Arthur, who was polishing the silver, and the boot boy, and now you.
Of course. What else did he say?
Mr. Noakes?
No, not Mr. Noakes. Jellaby. You heard Jellaby telling the cook.
Oh, Cook shushed him almost as soon as he got started. He didn't realize that I was being allowed to finish yesterday's rabbit pie before I came up to my lesson. I don't think you've been quite candid with me, Septimus. A gazebo is not, after all, a meat larder.
I never said my definition was complete.
Is carnal embrace kissing?
Yes.
And throwing one's arms around Mrs. Chater?
Yes. Now, Fermat's last theorem.
I thought as much. I hope you are ashamed.
I, my lady?
Yes. If you do not teach me the true meaning of things, who will?
Ah. Yes. I am ashamed. Oh. Carnal embrace is sexual congress, which is the insertion of the male genital organ into the female genital organ for purposes of procreation and pleasure. Fermat's last theorem, by contrast, asserts that when x, y, and z are whole numbers each raised to the power of n, the sum of the first two can never equal the third when n is greater than 2. Nevertheless, that is the theorem.
It is disgusting and incomprehensible. Now, when I am grown to practice it, I will never do so without thinking of you.
Thank you very much, my lady. Was Mrs. Chater down this morning?
No, tell me more about sexual congress.
There's nothing more to be said about sexual congress.
Is that the same as love?
Oh no, it is much nicer than that. I am teaching, Jellyby.
Beg your pardon, sir, but Mr. Chater said it was urgent that you receive his letter.
Oh, very well. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chater asked that I give to him your answer directly, sir.
My answer. Well, my answer is that, as is my custom and my duty to his lordship, I am engaged until 11:45 in the education of his daughter. When I am done, and if Mr. Chater's still there, I will be happy to wait upon him in the gun room.
I will tell him so, sir. Thank you.
Oh, what's for dinner, Jellyby?
Boiled ham and cabbages, my lady, and a rice pudding.
Ooh, goody.
Well, so much for Mr. Nose. He puts himself forward as a gentleman, a philosopher of the picturesque, a visionary who can move mountains and cause lakes, but in the scheme of the garden, he is the serpent.
When you stir your rice pudding, Septimus, the spoonful of jam spreads itself round and round like the picture of a meteor in my astronomical atlas. But if you stir backward, the jam will not come together again. Indeed, the pudding does not notice and continues to turn pink just the same. Do you think this is odd?
No.
Oh, I do. You cannot stir things apart.
No more you can, time must need runs backwards. And since it will not, we must stir our way onward, mixing as we go. Disorder out of disorder into disorder, until pink is complete, unchanging and unchangeable, and we are done with it forever.